Hi, and welcome to another episode of Prevailing Through Pain, where our healthcare hero today is Kimberly Drake, nurse clinical coordinator. Kim, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, Miss Kimberly, we're just going to jump right
Okay.
in. So, everybody sees this beautiful portrait of Kimberly Drake today, but I just want you to paint the picture of how you got to be the person you are today. Take it all the way back to your humble beginnings.
Okay. Well, I am originally from New York City, the Boogie Down Bronx to be exact. I was born and raised there until high school. My parents, I grew up in a two-parent household. I'm the baby of four siblings, and I'm the baby. So it's a very big age gap between me and my siblings. So I kind of had the advantage of being the only child at home as well as, having siblings. And so we lived there. We grew up in church. You go to three services on Sunday.
Oh
You go to
Lord.
Bible study on Wednesday. One of them type of
Mhm.
families. And then my brother had a mass choir, so we sung in that choir, and so that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of memories. It was the strong family dynamic. And
Mhm.
then our house caught a fire in New York, and we lost everything.
Oh wow.
And that was the first time that I saw my dad actually cry, because he had came from a small town in East Texas, brought his family to New York, built
Mhm.
everything, and established his barbershop. And now everything that he built was gone in flames. And so he decided that he was going to move back to Texas. And he went a couple of years before my mom and I to get his barbershop established and get everything situated for us. We would come home, come to Texas on the holidays, and we would go vice versa in the summer. But that's how I ended up moving to Texas.
Okay.
And I moved to East Texas.
Which
Now,
city?
Jacksonville. Now, I came from the Boogie Down Bronx and I moved to East Texas. So it definitely was a culture shock.
Mhm.
And I had to get used to the transition. I especially going into high school when all you know is New York City. So that definitely was some adjusting.
And I was going to say, and coming from New York,
Hmm.
I'm sure you were probably picked on because you a city girl and you come in there and
It definitely was. Well, when you go to a small town, well, as small as that town is,
hmm
you got to be careful because most of the people are your cousins.
yeah, yes,
So you
true,
got to
true,
be
true,
careful.
true.
And then, like I said, my dad had went ahead of us, and so they knew, oh, Mr. Peoples, that's Mr. Peoples' daughter.
Okay.
So that was the cliche I had. Oh, Mr. People's daughter from New York. And so it was the girl from New York, Mr. People's daughter at first. So it was, yeah, it was a lot of adjusting that I had to do. But I found my own, I found the people that I connected with, and I just decided to make the best of it.
Mhm.
Because at first I was crying, asking my mom, please let me go back to New York because my aunt was still up there. Can I go back up there? And she was like, you gonna leave me by myself down here? I'm like, ugh. But I got there and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make the best of it. I'm gonna join organizations and do what I need to do. And that's what I did. And so I made it my own.
Okay.
Mhm.
So about how old were you at that time when you moved to Texas?
I was going to high school, so I guess 13, 14, something
Mm,
like that.
yeah,
14.
that
Mhm.
is a difficult period
Oh,
because
very
that's just a
critical.
difficult period in our time, just trying to figure out what our body's doing, much less the
Tell me about it. I was like, Lord, what is this? And you said you're my cousin. Wait, what? Have I ever met you?
that's funny. Okay, so you make it through high school, and
Hmm.
what's next?
So I made it through high school, and I decided, like I always grew up saying, I'm going to be a pediatrician. I want to be a doctor. And so I went looking at schools, and I went to Baylor University. And I got there, and I'm gonna be totally honest with you. One of the selling points of Baylor University was when I got there and I went in the sub, they had a Blimpies in there. And in New York, Blimpies was my thing. I always ate Blimpie sandwiches. I couldn't find a Blimpies nowhere else in Texas. And so when I seen Blimpies, I was like, it
This
must
is
be
it.
a God. This is a sign right here. And so that's how I had the final decision. But of course, their medical program was superb, and they had a name for themselves, and so that's how I ended up deciding to go to Baylor.
Okay.
hmm
So tell us about a dark period in your life that you recall.
Um, well, I weathered a lot of health challenges, even when I was younger. When I was in
Mhm.
high school, I had a point where my jaw just locked up. I couldn't open my mouth. I'm like, what is going on? And so my mom took me to the doctor. They did all these tests, like, oh, well, maybe she has a brain tumor or she has this and that. And we were trying to figure out what it was. And so ended up having TMJ, temporal mandibular joint dysfunction, which is back then was new, but now a lot of people have it that have
I
had
didn't know that.
braces. Yeah, like a lot of people that have had braces is very common because your jaw has been shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And so it causes you to have an imbalance in your jaw structure. And so I had TMJ, and for I guess about 2 months, I couldn't unlock my jaw, so I had to have nothing but liquids. And then the doctor was telling my mom she'll never be able to go to college because it's going to be too stressful. It'll make her grind her teeth too much and it'll lock her jaw. And, we may not be able to open it. And I was one of those people, if you tell me I
Can't do,
couldn't,
yeah.
then it makes me even furthermore, like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was very hard because you know how Kanye West said he had to sip Ensure for breakfast? That was me.
Mm.
So I was having to have Ensure, booze. My mom would grind up food and I'll sip it out of a straw. And so that was a very dark part in my high school career. But I got through that and I had a praying mom, I had a praying dad. And so that definitely helped me. And my mom was always my driving force, the one that's like, oh no, you're going to get through this. It's okay. And so that helped push me forward as well, too.
I was thinking when you said the TMJ is the correct terminology.
hmm
I think when I was growing up, they used to say, they got the lockjaw. I
Well,
never knew, but you know what? I never knew what the lockjaw
the
was.
technical term for it, right?
And
Well,
I'm in
now you
healthcare.
know.
Yeah, and I'm in healthcare. I can't even imagine
hmm
for 2 months.
It was like it was horrible. I was like, okay, so it's gonna open up, right? So every day. So I had to have therapy. They gave you injections. They show you how to pop it back open and different things like that. And so I got through that. And so then when I went off to college,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I remember my freshman year. And my mom had told me that a lady back when I was a child had prophesied over her and told her that she needs to pray for me every day. She's like, God has something great for her, but the enemy doesn't want it to come into
Mm.
fruition. And so, therefore, you need to pray over her because she's going to be challenged. And so, every time something would happen to me, my mom would say, I pray for you, but I didn't pray every day. And I feel so bad, and this and that, or whatever, which I knew that didn't have anything to do with it. But of course, as mom, that's how you feel.
Mhm.
And so I went to college, and I remember I went to get out my dorm bed, and I could not get out my bed. I was like, I can't move. And my back had locked. But what happened was I had a bad car accident with my mom when I was younger, where
Mhm.
she didn't walk for several months. And I had hurt my back, but it never really bothered me. But I guess at that time, it ended up just flaring up. And so I went to the hospital and they told me like I had some bulging disc and different things like that. And but the funny part about it is when you sit here and you're going through something, you're like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? It was a blessing behind it because with that, I ended up receiving a scholarship from the Texas Rehabilitation Commission because of that injury that paid for my books for the rest of college. So, I always feel like when one thing happens, God has something, a ram in the
Mhm.
bush. He has,
Mhm.
something for you. And so for that, I'm forever grateful. I wasn't grateful for the pain, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I was definitely grateful that at least something good came out.
Okay.
hmm
So you went to college, was nursing? No, you said a
I was
doctor.
pre-med. I was biology
Mhm.
pre-med at first. And I got in there and took that biology class and I was like, whoo, now wait a minute. I'm not quite sure that I want to spend this many years in school anymore. Biology, it definitely was a weed out course. And so um, I went through biology. I struggled with it. Ended up passing barely. But then I was like, I think I want to have a family and kids, and I don't want to stay in school that long. And so that's when you start having those thoughts in your mind, like, okay, what else do I want to do? And that's how I got into nursing. And my daughter actually the other day asked me, well, would you have changed it? I said, I actually would have. And she said, why? I was like, because I feel like you should follow your dreams. Yes,
Hmm.
having kids and being married is something that desire. But if you want to excel your career, I feel like you need to continue on that path. And so that is something that I wouldn't necessarily just regret, but that is something that will
You
always be in the
should
back of my
pursue.
mind. What would have happened if I would have continued on that path?
So did you get married when you were in college, or you just thought of?
Oh, no, no, no. That was just me in my head. Like,
Yeah,
I
that's what
don't
I was
want to
gonna say.
spend.
You were thinking, if I
Yeah,
do this, then.
if I'm in like if I have to go to medical school, by
Hmm.
the time I get married, I'm gonna be close to my 30s, and just thinking too much.
Can we get in our head and just, yeah, getting our own way?
Just thinking too much.
But look, I applaud you for the nursing. I was in the nursing program and then anatomy and physiology. I was like,
Oh yeah.
oh my
Oh
God.
yeah.
I remember making a C. That was my first C in college, right?
That's how I was in biology. I
Oh
was
my
like,
God. I went to my professor and I said, I need to drop this class. He looked at my grade and he said, "You're passing my class." And I said, "I know, but I'm passing with
with
a
a
C."
C.
And and I said, "This field is so important." And he said, "How much did you pay for that book?" So I said, "What I paid for the book."
Hmm.
He said, "Okay, the stuff you don't remember, go look it up in the book. Get out of my class." So he didn't let me drop his class, but yeah, nursing was a whole lot. The classes I don't think was so much that got to me. It
Hmm.
was the patient care, going in there and being able to not cry. That's what I kept doing, crying on my patient.
Oh, see, the patient care, it doesn't bother me at all. Like that's my thing. That's my strong suit.
Hmm.
I get in there and I find a way to relate to the patients and I just hone in on that. Um I'm a clinical nurse coordinator now, so I don't do as much of the bedside as I used to.
Hmm.
But I remember having patients just sit down and confide in me. And I even have some patients that I'm friends with on Facebook or that have
Oh.
my telephone number I'm like, I remember when you had your kid, and your kid is like 12 or 13 now. And it is definitely a blessing to be a part of a critical moment in
Hmm.
someone's lives and know that you had an impact on it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, thank you for being that person.
Well, thank you.
They kept asking me to leave the room. I'm sitting there crying.
Uh-uh.
Honey, you want to leave the room? It's okay. Okay. But um, so finish school.
Hmm. What happened after that? I left Baylor and I went to Virginia. And so I said,
Why
okay.
Virginia?
Well, I have a brother that lives in Virginia. It's like the DMV area. So, Virginia, Washington, Maryland area. And I wanted to spread my wings because I've always been up under my mom and dad.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to be a quote unquote adult. Let me be an adult. I'm going to go, spread my wings. And so I went to Virginia and I started working up there. And after 3 years, well, I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter. And I wanted to be closer to my mom. And so I remember at this point I had got pregnant with my daughter. I wasn't married. And
Hmm.
so I was so embarrassed to tell my dad that I was
Hmm.
having a child out of wedlock. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I failed them. Now I'm a grown woman with a career, living on my own. But to me,
Yeah.
I felt a certain type of way. And I remember talking to my mom, and she was like, that's between you and the Lord. And she was like, the blessing is what you're carrying. And she
Oh.
was like, we're going to talk to your dad and you'll be fine. So I remember we're on the phone with my dad together. And she was like, my mom always knew how to put it together. And she said, I know, bad man. So she has something to tell you. And so I was like, well, Dad, I'm pregnant. And he was like, oh. he was excited and I was shocked, but it was a burden lifted off of
Mhm.
me to know that they didn't judge me in that moment, you know. And so after that, I had my daughter and then I
So you
decided.
stayed there though?
I
Okay.
stayed there and I had a preterm labor with her, a horrible
Mm.
pregnancy, in and out the hospital, and luckily I had my oldest brother there, and so him and his wife was a constant for me and helping me throughout the pregnancy, and my daughter's father. And then I decided to, at 6 months, like, okay, I need to be closer to my mom.
Mhm.
And so me and my daughter's father were separating, and so I decided to move back to Texas, but not East Texas. I moved to McKinney. And so that's where I've been for the last 19 years.
Wow.
Hmm.
And your mom and dad were in
They were in East
they
Texas.
were still in East
Hmm.
Texas. That's how I ended up in Texas by way of Tyler in East
Well,
Texas.
that's 30 minutes from Jacksonville. So
Yeah.
real close.
So I could relate to what you were saying
Yeah.
when you said coming. Yeah, even coming from Oklahoma, that was a
Yeah.
eye opener for me. So
Yes, definitely.
you moved back to Texas. You
Hmm.
had your daughter, and
I had my daughter and I went to, I started working and I got my foot in the door. I started meshing with all and I never really have a problem with connecting at work with new staff and different things like that. So I got my foot in the door and my work family became like real family.
mhm.
We connected on that level. And then I ended up getting married and had my son 2 years later. And so went through my marriage. Well, went through my marriage and that ended up ending in infidelity and dealing with emotional abuse
Mhm.
because when I had my son, I had preterm labor with him too, but a week after I had him, I ended up with a perforated ulcer. And so I was sitting there and all of a sudden I'm like, why am I still nauseous? I'm not pregnant. And I just started throwing up blood like
Mm.
everywhere. I lost like half the blood in my body. I remember sitting in my bathroom and it was a closet in my apartment bathroom. And I remember seeing it illuminate like, and I really thought I was on my way out. And then my mom just started quoting the scripture as I passed by thee and saw thee polluted in thy own blood, while wasting thy own blood live. And she just kept,
Mhm.
repeating it. And so I remember saying, just take care of my kids. And she was like, no, you're going to be here to take care of your kids. You're going to be okay. You stand strong. And as I kept throwing, and then she was like, but stop throwing up blood.
But I'm fine.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, if I could.
Yeah.
And so went to the hospital, had blood transfusions, ICU, had to have another surgery, get the ulcer cauterized, and rehab from that. But after that, it triggered a lot of gastrointestinal issues. So I was
Mhm.
back and forth to the hospital, couldn't figure out what really was the problem. And at that time, my husband wasn't supportive. And so he just, would ask questions like, how long you expect for me to go through this? I didn't sign up for this and different things like that. And then he ended up cheating um, in our house while I was at work. And so
Mhm.
that was kind of the final straw
It's,
where.
it's interesting how we forget those words for better, for worse, for sickness, and in
Mhm.
health. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And when you're at your most vulnerable um, state, for someone that you feel is supposed to be, your partner, to say words like, how long you expect for me to
Yeah.
go through this? It's painful.
As
It's
you're going through it,
mhm,
yeah.
mhm. And so what it did was it caused me to, build a wall where I'm never going to feel vulnerable like this again. I'm
Mhm.
never going to, let a man make me feel like this. And so that was, relationship challenges that I had to work on throughout the years of bringing down that wall of being vulnerable and letting you in when, I had health challenges or anything, because I just didn't want to give you that access to hurt me.
Mhm.
So,
So how was he a supportive stepfather?
is he a step?
No, I said, was he a supportive stepfather?
Oh, no. He wasn't a supportive father.
Mm,
So, um, at the very beginning, when things were new, of
mm,
course, it was great because it's like, oh, the baby and this and that. And, my daughter was 2. And
mm.
so, everything was good. But when it comes to the grind and making sure you're taken care of and everything is done in decency and in order, then no, that was not going to get done. It was all left up to me.
To you. And I asked that because I'm a woman that had a stepmother and a stepfather, and
Mhm.
and it was hard for me to understand how my step parents could be so cruel,
Mhm.
and yet they were married, to my parent, and I'm
Mhm.
their child. And so that was always my thing. If I married somebody with a child, I
Mhm.
had to, to
Yeah.
love that child been a part of them. And I hear different women, and we make excuses so much
Mhm.
for so many things. But that says, well, he's good to my children. He treat me like crap, but he's good. He's good to my children. Or he works. He's providing food for us, and so.
I mean, he wasn't like as far as his attitude towards my
Hmm.
daughter, that was fine. But as far as being a provider or taking some of the stress off of me, as far as balancing the workload of the kids, that was not
Hmm.
happening. But definitely, he didn't do anything to hurt her or make
Hmm.
her
Hmm.
feel,
Hmm.
any type of way. But it stopped
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. We're gonna take a pause for
Okay.
a sponsor break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Do you have a powerful story of perseverance? Have you triumphed over pain and want to share your story with the world? We're looking for inspiring guests to join us on the Prevailing Through Pain podcast. Head over to karencherry.me/guest. Fill out the form and let us know your story. Your voice could be the one to inspire others. Your experience could be the one to lift up someone else. Go to karencherry.me/.
All right, thanks, and we're back. So it sounds like you were at the end of that marriage, and
Yes, definitely. I had got to a point where I was actually in the hospital and I came home, and that's how I found out that he was actually cheating. And so it just got to the point where if you're going to be that disrespectful and cheat in my house, with all the hotels and everything in the area, um, I could, do bad by myself.
yeah,
So I just had to let that go.
and I was gonna say more than likely, I'm digressing, but I was gonna say more than likely she knew he was married.
Oh
So
yeah, we have pictures on the wall. So
yeah, so and so what does that say for that woman that allows herself to get in that situation?
exactly.
But I remember one time, and I know what my underwear looked like. But I remember one time I'm doing laundry and there was a pair of underwear, women's underwear, and it was not my underwear.
Hmm.
And so I said, whose underwear are these? And he said, how do I know I don't wear panties? And I sat
So
there and I sat
nonchalant.
there saying to myself, did I get some new? No one knows what my panties, but I sat there and allowed myself.
Yeah, you put that in your head like this can't be. It's
But,
I think it's a defense mechanism.
hmm.
You trying not to, you like this
Yeah,
can't be.
that couldn't have really happened.
Yeah,
I know he wouldn't do that. Not to
yeah.
me.
And I came from my parents when my parents passed away this year and last year. They had been married for 61 years.
Wow.
And so I didn't want to get a divorce
Mhm.
because that's all I knew. All I knew was it's a two-parent home. We worked together, we figured it out. One thing I would say is, and that I never learned, if my parents did argue, I never saw it,
Mm.
and so it was a blessing and a curse because when you do have those challenges in a relationship, I don't really, I had to learn how to navigate those because I never seen any adversity in the house. So, and I mean, I know they had challenges,
Mhm.
but us as the kids, we never saw it. And so when you get into a marriage or relationship and you get faced with arguments or disagreements or challenges, you're like, what is this? How am I supposed to handle this? And you kind of either shut off or melt down or,
Mhm.
just succumb to whatever they say. And so that definitely was something that I had to work through in relationships.
So now you 2 children
Mm-hmm.
and divorced.
Mm-hmm. So 2 children and divorce, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am a single mom. Let me cry my eyes out right now. That was my initial thought.
Mhm.
I felt defeated. I
Mhm.
felt as though I had let myself down. I had let my parents down. I had let, my kids down because I never wanted them to grow up in, a one parent home. So I started I started grinding. I started doing whatever I had to do. If I had to work extra hours, because I was determined that they weren't going to feel the blunt of a single
Mhm.
parent home, because I wasn't getting support from the other parents. I wasn't getting the financial or the physical support. So it was all on me.
Mhm.
And my mom and my dad talked, and so I worked nights. So they volunteered for my mom to come up, and she would stay the days that I worked. Then she would go back home. And so that was the only way, because I was like, I can't afford to go to day shift. Like,
Mhm.
I need this night shift differential. And I just, like, what am I going to do? And so my mom and dad talked, and like I said, they were always my rock.
Yeah.
It was always my support. They was always my cheering squad. And my mom was like, we talked about it, and this is what we're gonna do. Like, she didn't even let me ask her. She was like, this is what we
What we gonna do?
decided. This is what we're gonna do. And so I just appreciate them so much for the
Oh,
sacrifices that they
mhm.
made, because that was the reason that I was able to continue my career and continue to push through and be able to provide for my kids and allow them to be in volleyball and basketball and all the activities that they wanted, and not feel the blunt of that single parent home you
Yeah.
know so yeah, that was a blessing.
Mm.
It came with some challenges. It came with challenges where you had to navigate the why doesn't my daddy want me. I had to deal with a relationship where the guy suffered mental illness, was a schizophrenic.
Mm.
And so I had to deal with that relationship and battle that and try to keep this normal face
Mhm.
as it started to progress. So that was something that was a big dark time in my life, because I'm dealing with someone that has mental illness and you're trying to get them help, and you don't realize how hard it is in the mental health field to get someone help
Mm.
when they need it, without them knowing that you're the one that was trying to get them help. And so there were times that I had to, he would be talking to himself, and we're out in public. And so I'm trying to laugh and act like he's talking
Oh
to
my
me
God.
so it won't be obvious. Um, and then he ended up committing a crime and, setting a store afire. And so I had to deal with that and shield that from my kids as well.
Mhm.
And so that definitely was hard.
Mm.
And so with that, I just continue, like I said, to push through and lean on God and, lean on my parents and just try to, make the best of it.
Wow. Let me ask you about the mental illness, because I know it's real, and when I look at the news and I see where someone got killed,
Hmm.
and they'll say that the person or someone in the home called the police because they know that person suffered from mental illness,
Hmm.
and the person was killed. Um, I don't know that. I don't think I've ever um, actually have been. around someone that I knew
Mhm.
that had mental illness. Now, we'll say real quick to our family, you know, you're retarded. You know, you're retarded. But I'm saying that
Yeah.
really had mental
Yeah.
illness. So, you know, and as a nurse, what are, I guess, signs that family members might see,
Mhm.
and I'm assuming there's medication, but I guess medication can only do so much too.
Well, they have to kind of filter out and figure out what medication works because every medication doesn't work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with mental illness, a lot of times when they take those medications, it makes them feel really groggy, it makes them
Mm-hmm.
sleepy.
And they probably
It's
don't want to take it.
Yeah, they don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Or another thing is they'll start taking it, and once it makes them feel better, they either half dose it or don't take it, and then they end up
That,
going right back to where they were. And so it's very challenging to have to deal with that. I tried to be as supportive as possible. And because you feel bad too,
mm.
you like, I don't want to leave you at your
I know we
lowest
put all this
moment.
guilt on us. Now it's your responsibility to make him well or to stick with him.
Yeah, and as a nurse, you're a nurturer and you
Mm-hmm.
want to fix it and
Mm-hmm.
make things better. And so that was my goal. But then I had to realize that, that wasn't necessarily my fight to fight,
Mm-hmm.
and I could only do so much. And so it took me a minute to get to that point. But I had to realize what was the best interest for my kids and for myself and for my own sanity. Because honestly, you start to feel like you got some mental issues when you're living in the house with them for so long. You start
Mm.
to be like, well, they said is that wait, do
Oh my
it
God.
may be some up there. Is that a hidden
Yeah.
camera? It make you go
Mm-hmm.
crazy. And so yeah, I had to, let that go.
How long did you live in that?
Um that was about 2 years.
Wow.
Hmm.
And you try to keep a smile on your
Oh,
face
oh,
and
no one to this day until they see this podcast. But and that's the thing. That is the thing. Is I fought many battles that people have no idea that I fought because I've always had this smile on my face.
Mhm.
I go to work, I do my job, I take care of my kids. They're healthy, strong, and I just don't miss a beat. But I've cried many tears behind closed doors. I've sat here and asked God, why me?
Mhm.
And try to figure out like why the health challenges, why the relationship challenges, why, do I have to go through this single parent life alone and different things like that. And so I had to a recent realize why not me? you
Mhm.
know Clearly I'm built for this because it comes in waves and I'm still standing.
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized, and I told you the other day, I was like, this whole fairy tale that I looked at my parents and I was like, oh, 61 years. And, I'm not going to be a doctor because I want to have a husband and a career and all this other stuff and kids. That whole fairy tale, clearly life is not a fairy tale,
Mhm.
but it's my story and it's
Mhm.
worth telling. And
Mhm.
so that's what I had to realize. And that helped me stop, saying, why me?
Mhm.
And change the narrative to, well, why not me?
And that's funny. My cousin says that, and I was on my pity pot some years ago, failed marriage, and
Hmm.
why, da, 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 da. And so why me? And she said, why not you?
Hmm.
And I was a little annoyed with her when she said that, but it's the truth because I feel those things that we go through
Yeah.
make us stronger. That saying they say, kill you, make you stronger.
Yes.
And if we come through it, we are better, smarter,
Hmm.
make better decisions and better people for
Hmm.
it. And even with, you sharing this story, um, you don't realize how many people you
Uh-huh.
help. I mean, we're talking about youngest child with with illnesses
Hmm.
and going to school, raising the children, going through
Hmm.
divorce, and
Hmm.
and still and still, you stand.
Yes, it's a lot, because even when I was going through my divorce, I separated, and 2 months later, my daughter was in a coma for 6 months. She had a pneumothorax, and her lung collapsed,
Oh,
and she was in a coma for 6 weeks. She had to learn how to walk again, talk again, everything. And so,
wow.
you deal that's what I say, when you're a single mom, you're not only dealing with the physical, you're dealing with the
Hmm.
emotional, the financial,
And
and
not just on
everything in
you. Yeah,
between.
you're dealing.
Mhm.
Yeah, you had
Mhm.
two
Mhm.
other humans that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh my
So
gosh.
it was definitely, a challenge, but I just kept going. I just kept pushing through. And sometimes I don't even know how I pushed through, to be honest. Sometimes I was like, it was a blur. And
Hmm.
I don't know how I got through some things. But as I look back, I know it was nothing but a God
Hmm.
factor.
And I was gonna say, and you had a praying mama.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
believe that prayer changes things.
Oh,
As a
yeah.
matter of fact, on Saturday mornings, my family, my mom, it was 5 girls,
Uh huh.
and although all of them are gone, my cousins, we call ourselves
Okay. Sister cousins.
cousins,
Yeah.
because yeah, we were always together, sister brother cousins. But 10:30 every Saturday, we have family prayer, and
Oh,
we're in all
do y'all
different
still
parts.
do it?
Oh yeah, yeah. As
Okay.
a matter of fact, I had prayer this morning.
Cool.
We're in different parts of the world,
Hmm.
but we all get on prayer line and we pray for, we pray for our family, we pray for the
Yeah.
country, and I'm a firm believer. Yeah,
Oh, it
prayer does
changes
change
things.
things.
Oh, it definitely changes things. And the thing that got me was, after I went through all that, my mom ended up with dementia.
Hmm.
And so with that, and I feel like God, they say works in mysterious ways.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my mom was attached by the hip. And so where she was, I was, and this and that. And so um when she got dementia, it started to progress, and she saw it was progressing. I used to try to get her little puzzles and different things to stimulate her mind. And,
Mm-hmm.
I take her to the kids' games, and we'd go to the gym, just do anything. I was like researching it. And then it got to a point where she knew that it was getting, progressive. And so my husband now had came into the picture,
Hmm.
and I remember him saying that she kept saying, Mark, you plan on sticking around? And she said he asked her about 3, 4 times. And so after that, literally, she went home. once she
Once she
felt
knew, that's
once
it.
she felt that he planned on sticking around, and she asked him, was he gonna take care of me and
Oh.
everything, she went home, because I know she felt the dementia was progressing, and she wanted to be with my dad before I think it got so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because once she got home, it was about a year later that she really started to decline, because
Mm-hmm.
COVID hit and she got sick with COVID, and then it never really got better. It made it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that God gave me that time with her dementia to prepare me for when
Mm-hmm.
she did pass. Because if she would have just passed suddenly, when we're talking several times a day, and she's my day-to-day operations, I felt like it would have hit harder. And so the thing with that was my dad, he stepped right in and filled in the gap. And my dad was always the breadwinner, out working, making sure that we had everything, and, supportive. But my mom was like in the day-to-day operations,
Mm-hmm.
And so when my mom, had the dementia, I would ride home from work every morning, and I would talk to her. My dad stepped right in and started talking. And I mean, me and my dad's relationship just blossomed. And I mean, we could talk about anything. And me and my mom was always an open book. Anything we wanted to talk about, we talked about. And so my dad started to be like that. First, it was a little awkward. I was like, but I don't know.
You know, mama.
I was like, do we really talk about relationship stuff? Yeah. But he made me feel so comfortable. And it was so crazy how he filled in the gap so easily. And that was such a blessing. And so when he passed last February, I always tell my husband, I struggle with that to this day, because I didn't have that same preparation that I had with my
With your
mom. And
mom.
so
Mm-hmm.
he was my buffer.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when he left, I was like, oh my gosh, and it was 2 months before he was supposed to walk me down the aisle. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was definitely like, it kind of like took my breath away because, they're both gone within 8 months of each other.
Yeah.
And so that was hard. Yeah.
So you jumped from being a single mom, and then you said my husband now. So
Yes.
tell us about that journey.
Yes, that was a journey. That was a journey. Like we had met each other, and then and just had like a mutual friendship,
Mm-hmm.
and then we didn't talk for a couple years, and then we ended up reconnecting, and it's ended up being something that was amazing,
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, that was when my mom was like, "Hey, you plan on sticking around? Are you going to be there to take care of my daughter and different things like that?" And I believe that he's the one that God kept for me,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, being like I told you with my dad being the buffer for my mom, I
Mm-hmm.
feel as though that he is the buffer for my dad.
Mm.
Like he's the one I call in the morning on the way home from work now.
Yeah.
He's the one that I could talk to. Those walls I talked about earlier that I put
Mm-hmm.
up about that vulnerability and stuff, over time I was able to bring those walls down. And so I definitely feel like God knew what I needed
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
season.
And when you needed them. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And I would never be like, "Oh, he's just perfect," but he's perfect for me,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Well,
So
I love your husband dearly, and he's flawless to me. So I'm so happy that you all met each other, that you all,
Yes.
yeah, as I call y'all, the power couple, that you all are the power couple that you are.
I love it. I love it. Yes. And we have a blended family. And so I thank God for that. I thank him for accepting my children and me doing the same. And so it's no more, my children or his children, is our children. So
Mhm.
definitely grateful for that family unit. So yeah.
So you have something interesting that's on the horizon. You want to tell
I
us about that?
do. Well, before I even talk about my blog, I
Okay.
also have my organization, Be Unique. And I actually had went on a little hiatus from that with everything that was going on with my parents, but I still have Be Unique, and that is a confidence building platform for youth. And our vision is to make confidence a lifestyle. All
Love it.
throughout childhood, I was always real skinny. I started out with buck teeth and had to get braces and, different things like that. And my mom was always that type, like a poor dog don't wag his own tail, and she always pushed me. And so I see kids today that
Mm.
struggle with, even my own kids that struggle with that confidence, and it
Mm.
keeps them from excelling forward. Fear keeps them from excelling forward
Mhm.
because they feel as though I'm not good enough, or I'm not going to, amount up to this other person with social media and different things like that. And so that's why I started Be Unique. And I
Mhm.
also have a book called My Confidence Cannot Be Conformed or Compromised, the journey to unshakable confidence. And so you can find that on mybeunique.com/ebook and download that. And, if fear has kept you from reaching your full potential, this is definitely the book for you. And so
Congratulations.
now I have Kim Talks blogs that will be released on February 22nd. And so that is actually the 1 year anniversary of my dad's death.
Mm.
So I wanted to turn lemons into lemonade.
Love it.
And so it it started because I would have moments where I would just feel propelled to, get online and something that was on my mind, just talk about it a little bit and different
Mhm.
things like that. And I had a cousin that was like, "Oh, I enjoy your Kim Talks." And I was like, Kim Talks, that sounds like it has a ring to it. And that was a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
And so every now and then, something comes up and I would just put it on there. It wasn't anything scheduled. And so as I've gone through life's challenges and I've talked to people, even the younger generation of nurses that have come in, as I talk to my own children, as I've talked to people in the Be Unique organization, I realized that there's no way that God has let me go through all these trials and tribulations for me not to be a testimony to somebody. And so I decided that I wanted to start a blog. And so what it is celebrating life's challenges and my remarkable blessing. And so it talks about resilience, strength, endurance, and all that God has, blessed me with. And so
Yeah.
it lets, it's not one of those blogs that's like, everything is peaches and cream. It's like, let me let you know what's been hidden behind this smile. But at the end of the day, I'm still standing.
I'm
And if
still
I'm still
standing.
standing, then you
You
can
can
still be
too.
standing too.
I
Yes.
love that.
And
I
so
love
you
it.
can go to kimtalks.net,
Okay.
and you can RSVP for the launch on February 22nd. So a special invite launch on February 22nd. You can also follow me at Kim Talks Blog on Instagram and Facebook. And just look forward to what God has in store for me.
That's wonderful. So y'all heard it first here. So find Kim and follow her.
Yes.
And yeah, participate because I love it. And
Yes.
thank you for investing, what God gifted you with. Whether, you said that test, it was a test to
Yes.
turn into a
Testimony.
testimony. And
Exactly.
so for you turn into a testimony and being able to be the beautiful person that you are today. So thank you so much for being a part of Prevailing Through Pain. And I look forward to all the great things that God has yet in store for you.
Yes. And I want to thank you for just being able to have a conversation with such a prestigious woman as yourself, to be able
Thank
to
you.
tell my story. I thank you for this opportunity.
No, I thank you.